Since 2020, in the heart of the global coronavirus pandemic, the Nichi Foundation and Friends of Hibakusha have collaborated on an annual remembrance of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II.
We have done so to amplify the urgent call for peace by the Hibakusha, or atomic bomb survivors, marking more than 75 years since the two cities were decimated by nuclear destruction.
This declaration for peace is especially imperative as the world is faced with increasing conflict, whether in the Middle East, Ukraine, or other parts of the world facing geopolitical tension.
Hello, my name is Jerry Honda, and I'm the president of the Friends of Hibakusha. We are proud to partner with the Nichi Foundation in collaboration with the Japanese American Religious Federation of San Francisco to present the public with atomic bomb commemorations over the past 4 years.
Hello, my name is Kenji Taguma, and I am the president of the Nichi Foundation. This year, we are presenting this encore presentation of a virtual remembrance, 75 years after the atomic bombings, which includes interviews with three Hibakusha, or atomic bomb survivors, as well as a short film by award-winning documentary filmmaker Emiko Omori, and an interfaith ceremony led by the Japanese American Religious Federation of San Francisco.
We hope the message of peace in this edited program resonates within us all, and that you can join us again next year as we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombings. We hope that we can all remain steadfast warriors of peace.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenji Taguma of the Nichi Foundation, publishers of the Nichi Weekly, Japanese American community newspaper. On behalf of the Nichi Foundation and Friends of Hibakusha, I'd like to welcome you to our virtual remembrance of the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Of course, we would have loved to have held a public ceremony outdoors in honor of the legacy of those who perished in the bombings, as well as the Hibakusha, or atomic bomb survivors. But due to the current coronavirus pandemic, unfortunately, we were unable to. Still, we felt compelled to recognize the occasion as best as we possibly could, as we strive to give voice to the Hibakusha and their urgent desire for peace.
Hi, my name is Jerry Honda of the Friends of Hibakusha, which is developed to support the group of atomic bomb survivors, including supporting the biannual medical visits by doctors from Japan, who provide medical checkups and consultations with Hibakusha in America. We are proud to present to you this wonderful program, featuring 3 exclusive interviews with Hibakusha, 3 short films on the atomic bombings, including the world premiere of Ashes of Nagasaki by award-winning filmmaker Emiko Omori, created especially for today's program, an interfaith ceremony, a virtual exhibit, and the interaction of Hibakusha and their descendants. You will also have an opportunity to participate in the Litany for Water offering from the comfort of your own home, a moving ceremony that closes today's program.
This amazingly collaborative program was put together in just over 2 weeks, but we feel that we have a deeply meaningful program to honor the Hibakusha, many of whom may be witnessing their last major milestone, commemoration of the bombings. We are not here to debate the use of the bombs, as the war brought out the evil in all corners of the world, whether it be the Jewish Holocaust at the hands of Nazi Germany or the military atrocities of the Imperial Japan. This is not the space for such debate. Rather, we wanted to offer a solemn occasion to reflect upon the dangers of nuclear devastation and the urgent need for peace in these turbulent times. The world has not witnessed a nuclear attack in 75 years, largely due to the collective voice of the Hibakusha. But what will happen once they're all gone? This is what makes today's program all the more important, to educate ourselves by listening to those with the moral authority to let the world know firsthand about the dangers of nuclear holocaust.
We'd like to start today's program with an interfaith ceremony to remember the victims of the atomic bombings, led by the Japanese American Religious Federation of San Francisco. We will start with an opening prayer by Reverend Deborah Lowe Skinner of Christ Episcopal Church, Seiko Kai, followed by Reverend Joanne Tolosa and Reverend Alan Matsui of the Konko Church of San Francisco, Reverend Grace Suzuki of Christ United Presbyterian Church, and Reverend Ronald Kobata of the Buddhist Church of San Francisco. This ceremony was recorded on Wednesday, August 5th, to coincide with the exact time of detonation of the atomic bomb of Hiroshima at 4:15 p.m. Pacific Time, 8:15 a.m. August 6th in Japan. At that time, Reverend Kobata hit a gong to mark 75 seconds of silent meditation in honor of the victims of the bombing. Please feel free to offer your own prayer or thoughts for peace in whatever way you feel comfortable.
Dear God, on this historic commemoration, we gather together as sisters and brothers of various religions. We together pray for those we love but see no longer. We pray for the hundreds of thousands who we do not know, all of whom died in the atomic bombings on August the 6th and 9th in 1945 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We also pray for all those who suffered and died in the aftermath from radiation poisoning, from physical and mental trauma, and from all other collateral injuries. We pray, dear God, that your almighty power continue to bring healing, peace, wisdom, reconciliation, and resolve, that all forms of warfare and inhumanity committed of man against man may cease once and for all. In the death and resurrection of your Son, Jesus Christ, you, O God, showed us that life is precious and has the possibility of ever being renewed and transformed, even out of the ashes and after the cataclysmic tragedy and loss. Gracious God, surround us and all who mourn this day with your continuing compassion and grace. Shore up our hope and resolve to be and to do better, to sow peace and understanding, and to help heal the suffering and injustices in this world with abounding love for you and for our neighbors of all races, religions, and creeds, from one end of the earth to the other, in your name and to your glory. Amen.
Hi there. Please bow your heads. Let us purify ourselves by letting go of our negative thoughts and emotions. Let us open our spiritual hearts to the way of the universe, feel deep appreciation for the gifts of life, and express our gratitude by honoring the memories of those who were victims of the atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki 75 years ago.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Divine Parent of the universe, we deeply thank you for your unconditional love and infinite blessings, which allows us to sustain our precious gift of life. This afternoon, we of the Japanese American Religious Federation of San Francisco are deeply humbled and grateful to gather here today at San Francisco, Japantown's beloved and symbolic Peace Plaza to offer our hearts and officiate this special ceremony, to pray for lives devastatingly lost, and to urge for peace throughout the world. May we acknowledge the preciousness of our own and all others' lives. May we help one another and live in harmony. May we change our hearts to reflect your love in all we do. May peace begin in our own hearts. May our actions form a peaceful world where each is respected and fulfilled. May we all live with our hearts one with you, Divine Parent Kami. Dear ancestral spirits, we are here to fondly remember you, express our love, apology, and sincere prayers for your eternal peace and happiness. The hundreds of thousands of you who have gone before us, losing your lives 75 years ago and thereafter, resulting from this country, our country, the United States, atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August of 1945 and its horrific after effects. At this remembrance service, we include 3 Hiroshima survivors from our Konko Church of San Francisco who have since transitioned to their eternal spiritual form. Reverend Mrs. Fumiko Matsui, wife of 3rd Head Minister Reverend Fumio Matsui, and dear mother of Reverend Alan Matsui and his 4 siblings. And devout believers from the Okubo family, dear sisters Kei Yoshioka and May Hartman. Dearest Mitama ancestral spirits born out of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings and after effects, you were given the gift of life in this vast and endless universe, and tragically, it ended abruptly in 1945 for the majority of you. You will be remembered eternally, your lives retold from generation to generation, hopefully as the first and last civilian populations in the world to experience firsthand nuclear weapons of mass destruction. We revere you as the ancestral spirits of our homes, our own divine spirits. We beseech you, stand by us, receive the favor of Divine Parent Kami, and help us to fulfill our urgent task for peace to resound throughout the world, for your countless generations of descendants to come and all people. We deeply and wholeheartedly pray for your eternal peace and happiness. May you be at ease knowing that our founder Konko Daijin taught us, whether in our physical or spiritual form, the universe is our eternal home. Please continue to protect us, guide us, and enrich us, that we may never lose the way of faith and hand it down to all generations, especially as we continue to navigate close to 5 months of sheltering in place during this COVID-19 pandemic and social unrest for true equality. Please accept our humble interfaith prayers and rituals today. Dear ancestral spirits resulting from the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings, we deeply, deeply thank you for you on this day, this very moment. Hibakusha no Mitama no Kami-sama, arigatou gozaimasu. Mitama no Kami-sama, osewa ni natte orimasu. Go meifuku o inotte orimasu. As you were.
Hear these words from the Christian scripture in the New Testament from Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. Don't be anxious about anything. Rather, bring up all of your requests to God in your prayers and petitions, along with giving thanks. Then the peace of God that exceeds all understanding will keep your hearts and minds safe in Christ Jesus. Would you please pray with me the prayer that is adapted from a prayer written by William G. Sinkford. Gracious God, like most traumatic scars, the ones that are found in Hiroshima and Nagasaki are permanent, reminders of the terrible damage human beings can inflict. Similar scars can be found in the hearts and souls of people around the world who understand this terror. Scars of grief, sadness, fear, and even shame. None of these scars promise an end to war and devastation. Instead, they serve as a reminder of healing and renewal, of a return to life. Gracious God, Spirit of life and love, help us to see our scars, those we have created, those we are called to witness, and those we can soothe and heal. We are grateful, deeply grateful for the buds and blossoms that even the most scarred offer as a revelation to the world. And especially on the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we renew our commitment to peace, individually, collectively, and globally. To peace within, which calms our anxieties and fears, to peace between, which overcomes differences, animosities, and conflict, and to the great peace, beyond even our understanding, that is your gift and which we attempt to be stewards of for the world. Amen.
Bujo midan yorai niu dojo sankakushi. We respectfully acknowledge the presence of Amida Tathagata entering this gathering place as we humbly offer tsuru for solidarity. Ujo shaka nyorai niu dojo sankakushi. We respectfully acknowledge the presence of Shaka Tathagata entering this gathering place as we humbly offer tsuru for solidarity. Ujo jippo nyorai niu dojo sankakushi. We respectfully acknowledge the presence of Tathagatas of the Universal 10 Directions entering this gathering place as we humbly offer tsuru for solidarity. The statue dedicated to Sadako Sasaki at the Hiroshima Peace Park has the inscription, "This is our cry, this is our prayer, peace in the world." The fountain at the Nagasaki Peace Park has a plaque with the words, "This fountain is dedicated to the children of Nagasaki who died crying for water. 75 years ago, soon after the most horrendous acts of human insanity, the use of atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the United Nations was established here in San Francisco to conceivably prevent the recurrence of these events and realize a truly harmonious and cooperative world. Today, some 3 generations later, we are still waiting while anxiously seeing the consequences of the original ideals not being realized, and now compounded by environmental destruction, the COVID-19 pandemic, and persisting injustices and inequities. So, as the 1970 folk song questions, when will we ever learn? Let us persevere in realizing that we are all pieces in the Buddha's golden puzzle of love and light that connects the world. We must keep our peace bright and strong. We will try to be kind and honest with all beings, including ourselves. We will try to think clear and helpful thoughts, to speak clear and helpful words, and to do kind and helpful deeds, knowing that on what we do now depends not only our happiness or unhappiness, but also that of others. May every piece in the Buddha's golden puzzle of love and light become bright and strong, and may we all realize and become perfect peace, P-E-A-C-E, personally experiencing awareness, connecting everything. In gratitude, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. At this time, we will now be striking the ceremonial gong that will coincide with the striking of bells in Hiroshima, Japan at 8:15 a.m. on August 6th, which was when the bomb dropped 75 years ago. And we will strike it once here and wait 75 seconds to commemorate the 75 years that have passed since that initial tragedy. Namanda, 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 namanda.
Seiko Fujimoto was only 3 years old when she was relocated from her family's home in Kura City with her younger brother to live with relatives in Hiroshima in the early days of August 1945. Just a few days before the atomic bombing of Hiroshima changed the course of their lives. When the bomb hit, her aunt, uncle, and cousin instantly perished. And all of a sudden, she and her younger brother, only 1.5 at the time, were on their own. He eventually perished in 1948, leaving Seiko with a strong sense of survivor's guilt. Now 78, Fujimoto lives in San Francisco, Japantown, where she serves as the executive director of the Japanese Benevolent Society of California, which manages the Japanese cemetery in Colma. We now present to you an excerpt of the first of 3 exclusive interviews with Hibakusha, Seiko Fujimoto.
This is Hichigo-san for the children's service, and then oldest one is me, and then I was 7 years old, and then my brother is 5 years old, as for the boy, and then my sister is 3 years old, and this picture was done 1948, November 15th. Yeah. I moved to Hiroshima August 2nd or 3rd. I was up because we always up earlier in the morning, and then we had a dog. I remember now, we had a dog. I was watching something coming down. That I remember. Like a balloon or something. I don't know exactly what they are. I was looking at it, and then because my cousin left to go to school to Hiroshima Station, and then my uncle also went for the work. Never saw them again. I understood from the doctor when they came here at the visit, and then I mentioned it, and he said that 2 kilometers.
2 kilometers.
I only remember was the wind so strong. That's about it. And the next things I knew, I wasn't sure where I was going or anything. I really hold on to him, and he was just year and a half or so. It's everybody is running toward the river, and then different ways. So I was too small, and then I understood from the nurse that people who escaped, they brought you here. And then I only remember at the time was a lot of people were, never screaming or anything, that mourning with the pain, and then everybody had a white things. When you get the burn, they get the white thing. The nail burning, and then the meat burning, that smell, I still have it in my nose. Very much so. I think you have to be there. You have to be there to feel the pain. The pain is not easy to explain. some of them are like my brother's age, is just looks like it sleeping there, but it's dead. Later on, I found out because that I used to tell my mother that baby was very good, doesn't move much, sleep, and then their side is the mothers too. And then, because I'm too young to know what is the death anyway. So this is it. This is the original, and I was very lucky to have kept it myself, and especially my brother. After 6 months later, he died with the leukemia. So much of the pain, and then they have to die. And after that, like me, I arrive, and I have children, and then I enjoy with the children and the grandchildren. But my brother had never chance to. And they always, I feel so guilty. Even if I buy something, I should buy this one. My brother didn't have any chance to. He wanted to have a watermelon. But sure now, whole year we have a watermelon. At that time has to be in the native season. And then June is another season to have it. And then Tokyo doesn't have any that field there to make it. So I couldn't eat watermelon. I never touched it after my brother died. Well, before we left Hiroshima and Nagasaki, another thing, I was told not to tell anyone where you come from. You are not allowed to say anything about Hiroshima. And we couldn't understand why, but that was the word from my parents.
What would happen when you mentioned that you were from Hiroshima?
That was really the long time left. That probably I was in high school, the girls of the high school. And then they said, oh, wow, you are in atomic bomb. Yes. And then said, my mom said, you shouldn't tell those things because if you do that, no one get married with you. So just don't say it. And then I wasn't so sure what was the reason that no one get married with a girl from Hiroshima. And then later, my grandparents showed me the pictures of how the baby was born, just one eye, and then those severe handicap, everything. It's to me, if you don't have any casualties, you are the winner. But even just one person who is as a casualty is dead, and then you are already loser too. And then they should learn what is the album that does affect you. Children doesn't have to talk adults people is not going to listen anyway. They don't know anything. They are more made up their mind. But the children as a round table with another country, each other, that might be understand each other and what is wrong, what it has to be, and then should visit Hiroshima Museum. That is the place that will tell you what is the hell, what is the heaven. When you go inside to see the demonstration displays and everything, that's hell. That's hell. But when you get out, just hear the children's voices, laughing, running around. That's heaven. So there is two places in one there. And all the children should have a chance to go. Every country's children should go.
Jack Moto Dairiki, 89, is a native of Sacramento, California, and currently resides in San Francisco's Japantown after retiring from a career as an architect. He traveled to Hiroshima, Japan in August of 1941 with his father during summer vacation to visit his ailing grandfather. But they found themselves stranded there for the duration of the war. As a 14-year-old student, he was conscripted to work for the Japan war effort, Gakuto Do-in, at Toyo Factory from January 1945 until the atomic bomb was dropped on August 6, 1945. On that fateful day, because of the bombing raids, his commute was delayed by 15 minutes, which ultimately saved his life. He still recalls that day of horror with vivid memory. Here is an excerpt of an interview conducted with Jack Dairiki.
In 1941 spring, we received a letter from Japan that my grandfather was ill. So my father and I, my father being the firstborn, I'm being firstborn as a grandson, want to visit the grandfather in case he passed away. And my father planned a summer vacation trip. We left San Francisco beginning probably first day on August 1941. So that's was a trip. And on the beginning of September, of course, we school here, a school, grammar school in Sacramento, would start. So the plan was to return to the United States before the school started. But on September of 1941, we found out there was no ship traveling from Japan to the United States. So we found out we were stranded in Japan. And that's where I ended up. So from 1941 until I returned to the United States in 1948, I was in Japan, all through during the war. So in January of 1945, I started to work as a Gakuto Doin, which was a term used with a student who drafted out of his classroom to help for the war effort, or work for the war effort. So when we're still students, so we had to take roll call. But on the fateful morning of August the 6th, the train was delayed by bombing raid, which was a constant everyday occurrence. And the train was delayed by about 15 minutes. But this delay of the train of about 15 minutes saved my life. Because when I left the home, I told my father that we were supposed to report to the factory, but from there we were to march in into Hiroshima City as a fire Prevention Brigade, which means turn down roads of home for fire break. And by 8:15, the area was clear. And all of a sudden we heard and saw the three bomber in the sky approaching Hiroshima. But strangely, there was no alarm going on. So we were out in the open and we were wondering, how come there's an aircraft in the air and no alarm? And now it's 3.5 miles, they were calculated, from the hypercenter of Hiroshima atomic bomb. And when that exploded 3.5 miles away from where I was, it was a blinding flash, about 10 times brighter than the sun, they say. And when center explosion was with 10 million degrees centigrade. And when the bomb exploded, it was about a mile above Hiroshima City. And so at the ground zero, it was several thousand degrees centigrade. As we know, we find out that 1,500 degrees centigrade will melt a steel bar into a liquid. So whatever it was in that area, was about 2.5 mile radius, so 5 mile diameter, everything in that area was disappeared, burned, explosion with an atomic bomb. Hiroshima City was the 10th largest city in Japan. 50,000 structure, probably 100,000 was damaged right away. There were 55 hospitals in Hiroshima. Only 5 hospitals remained standing to be able to help the injured, probably the outskirts of Hiroshima City. There were 200 doctors in Japan and Hiroshima, and only 5 survived to help. And there was 270 nurses. Only 70 nurses survived to help the injured. When the explosion happened, I fell down to the ground instinctively, covered my ears, not eyes and ears. My eyes are 4 fingers, my thumb in the ear. This was trained to do because if a bomb fall nearby you, a regular bomb, the explosion will cause a vacuum. It will take your eyeballs out and damage your eardrum. So this is what you do to protect yourself. And now when I opened my eye, I couldn't see a thing. There was dust and smoke in the area. Then I heard a classmate running toward a bomb shelter created for us about 1,000 yards away. So I started following the footstep noise and followed them. And when I got to the bomb shelter, which is elevated elevation, I looked back into the city, and all I could see was Hiroshima City covered in smoke and fire. And in the center of it, the mushroom cloud that we're so very much familiar with, climbing up into the air, a couple of miles up into the sky. And seeing that, I escaped into the bomb shelter. And perhaps about an hour or so later, curiosity brought us back to the bomb shelter entry to look out and see what's happening. And then we noticed that the mushroom clouds to break out into a cumulus cloud, and the thunderstorm and black rain was falling someplace. And we saw a single casualty walking in front of the bomb shelter about 100 feet away. And all we could see was a lady, young lady, her was burned off, and her arms stretched out in front, walking like a ghost. And we saw rag hanging from the arm. And we realized later it wasn't a rag, it was her clothes. It wasn't her skin hanging from her body. And we've seen that we retrieved into the bomb shelter. And just imagine, why was this happening? What happened here? We have not many injured people in our bomb shelter. But about 3 o'clock, we're finding out a report from a teacher. If you live away from the city, and if you're not injured, and you could walk, you could leave the factory. So that was the first time we left the bomb shelter. And then I noticed a ghost train coming out of Hiroshima toward our way. So I ran and hopped onto it, and all the windows of the train were blown out, The side that faced the bomb was blistered, the paint was peeled, and when I looked inside, all the chairs in the train was scattered by the blast, and people were asking for help, first aid, water, but I had nothing to offer them, so I decided I'll walk home. It was time to walk the 10-mile distance home. And my first question was, where's Father? He said, he went to look for you first thing in the morning. I never saw him. So, investigating the house, nothing was damaged, but all the doors was on the floor. And mostly 90% sliding doors. So we were able to use the house intact. And after dinner, Father came home at 9 p.m. and he told us what happened to him. He went to the factory to inquire about the students, and the factory was just a chaos. People running around in a circle, and he couldn't get any answer. So he assumed I went marching into the city with a class. So he went to the bridge to cross into the city, but the MPs stopped them. Nobody to enter because people were escaping from the city. Fire was burning, and Hiroshima City will burn about 3 weeks. So he said, walking through the city, it was like walking through hell. And the river, there were 7 rivers in the city, and most river was covered, 99% covered with dead bodies floating on the river. So people tried to escape the fire and the heat, jumped into the river and drowned. And that's what he reported when he came home. But one thing we noticed that my aunt was missing. She left at 7:30 train early enough to get to her working spot. Third day, miraculously, they came across a young lady of a 19-year-old. And when they called her name, she didn't really answer, but she just groaned. And looking around, she looked like my aunt. So they brought her home. It was fortunate it was my aunt. And they tried to take her for a burn, but there's no doctor or hospital available. So what my grandmother did was make baked potato, make it into mashed potato, use the mashed potato as a bandage and cover the burned area. 50% of my aunt's body was burned. So to this day, she's 96, 95, 96 now. So I try to get back to the United States as soon as possible, but it took me 3 years to get any approval to travel back to the United States. News. We had no idea, of course, about atomic bomb and the radiation effect. And we were trying to educate the world about this. It's a poisonous bomb, and it linger in your body to remaining for 100 years. People who live downwind from the atomic bomb get affected. Even if there are no injuries to them, if you get doused by the black rain that came out of the cumulus cloud, a thunder cloud above Hiroshima, if you get doused by it, a week later, they start to bleed from the gum, nosebleed, and the hair start to fall out. And there's a radiation effect and die about a couple of weeks later. They pass away. We know about record and try to tell the people. And the survivor, they want, the women especially, they will not expose themselves someday they saying they're Hibakusha or the victim of the radiation because nobody will marry them. Their offspring, if they have offspring, will be affected by the radiation, and it might be a deformed body, or there's no baby will be born by the effect of the radiation. And this is the thing that we tend to learn from the bomb. We used to have maybe 200 people every 2 years be examined by the doctor that come from Hiroshima to examine the survivor, to keep record how our body is changing. And now, last year, we had, out of 200, only 33 people came for exam. In other words, all the rest of them passed away or unable to travel to come to the free examination. And as long as I can, I want to speak out and talk to people and educate them. With probably about a dozen countries now have atomic weapon. the main for the Russian United States have 60% of it, but other 40% or maybe the last 20%, India, Pakistan, Iran, and so forth, they all claim to have some kind of atomic bomb. And it's amazing that so far, this is the 75th year, nobody have used it so far. And we hope it never happened, because once the bomb is used, then the earth is just going to disappear.
Nobuaki Hanaoka was born on December 25, 1944, in Nagasaki Prefecture. When the bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, he was 8 months old. Upon his father's return from his military duty in Taiwan, the family moved to Kumamoto, then to Fukuoka, where his mother died of leukemia when Nobuaki was 6 years old. His sister also died of leukemia within a year. After graduating from the Kanto Gakuin University Graduate School of Theology in Yokohama, he traveled to the U.S. After graduating from the Kanto Gakuin University Graduate School of Theology in Yokohama, he traveled to the U.S. He graduated from the Colgate Rochester Divinity School, Crozer Theological Seminary in Rochester, New York, and also attended the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California. He served United Methodist churches in Alameda, San Francisco, Sacramento, and Berkeley, and retired from active ministry in 2007. He has authored the book On the Back of a Buffalo and Eucharist. He is now 75 and resides in Daly City, California. Here is the last of our 3 interviews with Hibakusha, Reverend Nobuaki Hanaoka, a survivor of the Nagasaki bombing.
See, my name is Nobu Hanaoka. I was born on December 25th, 1944, about 20 miles from the city limit of Nagasaki. We're in between Sasebo and Nagasaki. So in a way, we are downwinders. So when the atomic bomb fell on Nagasaki, I was only 8 months old baby. In other words, I have no personal recollection of what the devastation of the city was like. And people who saw the devastation of the city, the bodies piled up, still smoldering, skin, dangling down from the faces, eyeballs sticking out and begging for water. And the moment you give them some water, they just collapse and die. And people still have a nightmare, after 75 years. But I didn't have that. But in Fukuoka, when I was 6 years old, my mother died. And then a few months later, within the same year, my sister died of leukemia. And as far back as I can remember, they were both in bed, looking very pale, very weak. I think the leukemia does that to you. So I don't remember my mother up and around. She was always in bed. And when I was about 20, I think 22 or something like that, my brother died of a mysterious disease, illness. When the doctors performed the autopsy, they found that his internal organs had deteriorated, as in the elderly man. And I thought maybe that had something to do with the radiation. And I asked the doctor if that was the case, and he said he wasn't sure. But he did say that, being exposed to radiation, anything could happen. It's like having a time bomb inside of you. Right after my sister died, my father wanted to know what was going to happen to the rest of the family. And the doctor said if he was exposed to the same amount of radiation as his mother and sister, he may not live to see his 10th birthday. I was only 6. I didn't know how to process that kind of thought, that I only had 4 years left. And I was so shocked and depressed and withdrawn. I was not able to utter a word for months. And then my 10th birthday came and went without an incident. In a way, I was relieved, but at the same time, the feelings of guilt. Why did such good people like my mother and my sister have to die, and I, good for nothing, I'm still alive? And I was almost always apologizing for being alive. And later on, when I began to associate with Hibakushas, I learned that it was quite common to have that kind of feelings. It's called the survivor's guilt. And another thing that I remember was that people telling us, my relatives are telling me, don't tell anybody that we used to live near Nagasaki when the bomb fell. Because if they know that you are a survivor, no one will hire you, no one will marry you, because you never know when you get sick and die. So even though I was spared from the initial impact of the radiation or the explosion of the atom bomb, I was suffering mentally and socially all my life. And it never left me 75 years later. so I would say nuclear bombs don't simply kill you, but make you suffer all life. The fact that they all felt that those who died immediately after the bombing were the lucky ones, because they were spared of the long sufferings, pains, and nightmares, and so forth. And every time I catch a cold or something, I always felt that this is the end of my line and ready to go. So I couldn't really plan on anything, long terms. So that was personality that was created by the atomic bomb. My mother was always concerned about me. And, when she died, I was in the first grade. My brother came to fetch me. And I remember running across the schoolyard with my brother crying. And when I got home, everybody was there crying. So I remember vividly the day she died and how sad it was, because she never really had a chance to live and enjoy motherhood. So Friends of Hibakusha was basically a support system for the Hibakushas, so that they could talk about their experiences without, making people being annoyed of hearing the same stories. I think I'm just about the youngest among the survivors, Hibakusha, and I'm getting old. and I want to speak up as much as possible before I can't anymore. So I really think that nuclear bomb is not just a bomb. It's a means of indiscriminate killing, mass destruction, and creators of mass misery. So what we need to do is to make sure that there's no more war. We must do everything to keep peace. So, the whole thing is, we have returned to the Cold War era nuclear arms race between Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, US. And I think the United States has to take leadership in, bringing these nuclear states, 9 states in the world now. And, we should gather them to a table of negotiation and start discussing dismantling of all these nuclear arms. And otherwise, anything could happen. People talk about the threat of nuclear weapons or nuclear wars, but nobody can talk about it in personal terms. I can still talk about my death of my mother and sister and my brother. It's personal. They were forced to take part in the war. And also, I think we really need to emphasize, we're not talking about nuclear weapons anymore. We're talking about thermonuclear weapons. The thermonuclear weapons are at least 1,000 times more powerful than the conventional nuclear weapons. And it's getting more and more powerful, destructive. And if anything happened, and also Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were only 15 kilotons or 20 kilotons. We're now talking about 2 megatons, 3 megatons. That means 3 million tons of TNT. And it'll, if those are dropped in Japan now, the whole archipelago will disappear. And it's not something to laugh about. It is madness that we don't give up these weapons. So I think we need to just start, keep talking about how crazy it is that we can't let go of these killing machines.
Next, we have a very special treat, the world premiere of Ashes of Nagasaki by acclaimed Bay Area filmmaker Emiko Omori, winner of the Sundance Documentary Cinematography Award and National Emmy for Rabbit in the Moon. This film follows Jan Chosen Bays of the Great Vow Zen Monastery in Oregon as she leads a group of Americans on a pilgrimage to Hiroshima and Nagasaki on the 60th anniversary of the atomic bombings in 2005. Do that again.
Yeah.
In this poetic short film, made especially for today's event, the group offered some 500,000 Jizo prayer flags to honor those who perished in the atomic bombings and survivors. We really appreciate Emiko for putting this film together for this event.
I had been doing child abuse work for about 10 years, and I was in a state of burnout, or we call it compassion fatigue, secondary trauma, when you have seen so many horrible cases of abuse, talked to so many kids who've been horribly traumatized. It was a bad year, and we lost 30 kids from child abuse. And most of those babies I had seen before they died. And I talked to their families, and I talked to the nurses who are very traumatized taking care of them. So there was just this huge well of human suffering in here that I accumulated over those 10 years. And I went to this Jizo ceremony to remember those 30 children in particular from that one year. But then as I was sitting in this ceremony, and it's done in silence, and you sew a remembrance token for the children who've died. And what I did was I made a little cape, and I took some eucalyptus leaves, and I sewed them into 30 of them, for the 30 children, into a little old-fashioned raincoat. In Japan, they wear raincoats made of straw or leaves. I put that on the Jizo in the garden. And then did the ceremony, and then I had to fly home fairly quickly. But as the plane lifted off, I just felt pounds lighter. It was like this burden had been lifted from my heart and from my body, from my physical body. And I thought, I don't understand how, but this ceremony is really important, and Jizo is really important in the West right now. I visited the peace museums in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I was so stunned by the exhibits, and especially the exhibits of the children, where they just have these little fragments of a lunchbox or a sandal or a school uniform. And I hadn't realized before that there were so many children killed. They had mobilized them to the center of the city to clear fire lanes. And so they were at the epicenter, thousands of kids, when the bomb exploded in Hiroshima. And they were just vaporized. So that's when I decided, well, maybe we could make a Jizo for everybody who died. But then I came home and I looked it up on the internet, and it was 270,000 in the first year. It's an estimate, they don't really know, combined in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So just about that time, Kaz came to the monastery to do a calligraphy retreat.
Chosen told me about her ideas of bringing Jizo images to Japan. And I said I would be happy to help her. And we visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki in December 2003. And I tried to help her making contact with officials and some people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and try to translate and sort of facilitate some meetings.
We brought some of the panels that we had made because we realized, well, maybe we have this idea, but maybe the Japanese don't want us to bring these things. So Kaz and I came to Nagasaki, and we met with some of the survivors. There were about 8 at the table, and we sat down, and they seemed very a little bit disconnected, which is unusual for Japanese. So I was a little alarmed that they seemed so reserved when I explained the project. But then when I unfolded the prayer flags, the atmosphere changed completely. They just became animated, excited, talking to each other, showing each other the panels, passing them around, smiling. And then they looked up and they said, nobody from America has ever done anything like this for us since the war. And that was the moment that I knew that we had to do this. Letting people know that this was so important in Nagasaki, especially because they're kind of neglected down here in terms of peace, peace people coming. We had a Jizo retreat, and it happened to coincide with the beginning of the Iraq War. Just as the retreat began, the war was turning from uncertain to certain. So the people who came to the Jizo retreat were very distressed. So I thought, well, let's try this out. Let's see if we can make these Jizo panels on cloth and see what happens. It turned out to be fortuitously wonderful because the hands-on practice of tracing these Jizos or drawing the Jizos, people actually made handmade stamps and stamped the Jizos. And with each one, you remember this is somebody who died in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Or each one you draw, you remember that. And then when you lift up, when you finish, then you send a prayer for peace in the world. And when you do that hour after hour, and you're chanting the Jizo mantra too, it was very, very, very settling. So I thought, okay, this works. One woman took it to 5 prisons in the Midwest. And so she had prisoners making them, including people who were in solitary confinement. 2 men had to draw in handcuffs. So they were in feet shackles, waist shackles, handcuffs, but still they drew 2 panels. And when those panels came to us, I also realized how many Asian people were in prison in America. Vietnamese names, Cambodian names. People all over the world started responding. At the beginning, we thought this is going to be hard to get 270,000, but we ended up with almost 500,000. When we were doing the 1 minute of silence during the pilgrimage here in Nagasaki, I was thinking about the people that were vaporized, and I realized, well, when they were vaporized, they just became the dust of the earth circulating in the atmosphere. And that dust doesn't go away. And we're breathing in now the dust from thousands of years ago, the dinosaur dust. So I realized, oh, we're all breathing in all the people that were vaporized. And of course, the people that were born right around the time of the bombing, we really breathed in a lot. We took in a lot of that physical energy, the molecules of those people that was in the atmosphere circulating around the world. But also their psychic energy, so their spiritual energy we also took in. That also lasts forever. So we are literally all survivors, all Hibakusha.
Next, we will have Nancy Yukai of Student for Solidarity talk about Sadako Sasaki and the paper cranes, and how the paper cranes have become a worldwide symbol of peace. She will also be followed by the reading of Sadako's peace statue inscription by Takeno Kota and Yuta Suzuki in Sendai, Japan, the daughter and grandchildren of San Francisco-based Hibakusha Seiko Fujimoto, whose interview we presented earlier today.
On August 6, 1945, when an atomic bomb was detonated by the United States over Hiroshima, a 2-year-old girl named Sadako Sasaki was at home, a mile from ground zero. The family home was destroyed, but miraculously, she was unharmed. Her family members escaped to the river, fleeing the fires through black, sticky rain. It was radioactive. 10 years later, Sadako was diagnosed with leukemia, what people called the atomic bomb disease. When she was in the hospital, she decided to fold paper cranes, following the traditional saying that if you fold 1,000 cranes, you will be granted your wish. Paper was so scarce that Sadako even used medicine wrapping paper to fold cranes. These are 3 that she folded, which are now in the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. She was able to fold more than 1,000 cranes, but in October 1955, At the age of 12, she died from leukemia and thyroid and throat cancer. Her school friends wanted to build a memorial to her and her courage, and to the children who died from the atomic bomb. They started a campaign, and 3 years later, a children's peace monument was completed, with a statue of Sadako holding a giant crane above her head. Since then, children all over the world have folded millions of cranes for peace and to ban nuclear weapons. Sadako inspired a children's peace movement. And one of the ways people know her story has been through children's books. Recently, Japanese American activists and allies have adopted the folded crane as a symbol of compassion and solidarity for refugee children and parents who are confined in U.S. detention camps. The movement is called Tsuru for Solidarity, or Peace Cranes for Solidarity. Cranes are hung on the barbed wire fences of detention camps. Large and small cranes, like a parent and a child, are also folded to show that all children, like Sadako, deserve to grow up in a safe and peaceful world where they are cared for, protected, and loved.
これは僕らの叫びです。これは私たちの祈りです。世界に平和を築くための。
This is our cry. This is our prayer.
For building peace in the world.
And now, as we come closer to the close of our virtual remembrance today, we will have a reading of an excerpt of the joint interfaith statement on the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. To do this, we call upon faith leader Reverend Michael Yoshi, who recently retired from the Buena Vista United Methodist Church in Alameda, as well as Mariko Lindsay, a Hibakusha from Hiroshima, and descendants of Hibakusha, including Lincoln Joe, Suzanne, Nichi, and Sachi Yoshi. Lincoln is participating in honor of his grandmother, Hibakusha Reverend Fumiko Matsui of Konko Church of San Francisco, while Suzanne, Michi, and Sachi are participating in honor of their mother and grandmother, Hibakusha Michiko Tatsuguchi. This will be followed by closing remarks by Reverend Yoshi.
As a wide coalition of faith-based communities from around the world, we have committed to speaking with one voice that rejects the existential threat to humanity that nuclear weapons pose.
We reaffirm that the presence of even one nuclear weapon violates the core principles of our different faith traditions and threatens the unimaginable destruction of everything we hold dear.
August 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of the nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Attacks which devastated those cities, causing up to 213,000 deaths by the end of 1945, and many more in the following years. The attacks inflicted excruciating pain and suffering on both humans and the environment.
We are grateful for the global Hibakusha survivors who have courageously borne witness, often in the face of intimidation and the recurring tragedy of loss and illness. We must meet the courage of the survivors with our own. We must abolish nuclear weapons forever.
We will not forget or ignore the powerful witness of those affected by developing, testing, and using nuclear weapons.
We are committed to ending nuclear weapons forever, to honor them and to save our children, grandchildren, and future generations from experiencing what they suffered.
As we build a world where equality, peace, and justice are abundant for all, there is no place for nuclear weapons in our shared future.
As we close this time together, we invoke the memory of those 214,000 persons who perished in Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and August 9th, 1945. We remember those Hibakusha who have passed away during these past 75 years. We also remember those Hibakusha that are still living, and especially thank Jack Dairiki, Seiko Fujimoto, and Reverend Nobu Hanaoka for their personal testimonies today. As we remember their stories and the lives of other Hibakusha, today we lift up prayers for their continued healing from the trauma of the bombing. And we also lift up prayers that our awareness may be transformed into action so that such tragedy may never happen again to any people upon this planet. In this time of COVID-19, the future of the global community calls for international cooperation and collaboration. And in this time of the movement for Black lives, the awareness of the history and legacies of racism are accentuated not only in this country, but around the world. And so it is with the proliferation of nuclear weapons. It is a moment in which we must learn from our collective history, from the voices of the Hibakusha, so that history is not repeated, but that through international cooperation and collaboration, we can share the resources of the world in ways that lead us into a new time in our collective history. But it does seem that history is repeating itself, with the drumbeat of war being sounded by the current U.S. administration against China, utilizing anti-Asian rhetoric in the context of the global COVID-19 pandemic to try to increase nuclear weapons funding. In the interfaith statement, focus is given to the 2017 UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which call for the complete elimination of nuclear weapons. We encourage faith communities and others to sign on to the statement and to educate grassroots on the proposed treaty while staying vigilant during this critical election season. May the voice of the Hibakusha be fully heard and understood now and forever.
On behalf of the organizing committee of today's event, we thank you for joining us in this truly memorable 75th anniversary commemoration of the atomic bombings. We appreciate you for logging on for today's virtual event to honor our last few remaining Hibakusha. We hope that their stories will continue to resonate throughout the world and will provide us with ammunition to be warriors for peace. We hope that their lasting legacy will help us to avoid nuclear destruction by any means necessary. But to do so, it is up to all of us, and perhaps the descendants of Hibakusha, to carry their voices for peace through the coming generations. Finally, we'd like to end with a powerful litany for water offering, led by our treasured Hibakusha, Reverend Nobuaki Hanaoka, a leading voice against nuclear proliferation. He will lead the pre-recorded ceremony with our very own Jerry Honda, with participating members of the Japanese American Religious Federation of San Francisco.
During this ceremony, you will have the opportunity to participate in this call to action, guided by the memories of those who are no longer with us. During the litany for water offering, Reverend Hanaoka and I will make statements to which the clergy will respond to from the audience. We invite you to join the clergy in response. You can repeat these statements marked all in the subtitles below. With your help, guided by the spirits of those who perished, as well as the Hibakusha, we hope that we can prevent nuclear destruction from ever happening again. Thank you again for joining us, and now we turn to Reverend Nobuaki Hanaoka to close our program.
At 8:15 in the morning of August the 6th, 75 years ago, the first atomic bomb was detonated in the sky above the city of Hiroshima. The explosion formed an enormous fireball. Its surface temperature reached 13,000 degrees Fahrenheit, twice as hot as the surface of the sun. The fireball grew larger and larger in midair, and when it touched the ground, it incinerated everything in its way. including innocent men, women, children. Many of them instantly evaporated, and those who survived it were severely burned and dehydrated. Water, give me water. Give me water, please. The weak voices of those ghostly figures in procession pleading for water still echo in our ears.
We offer them a cup of water to quench their thirst. 3 days later, at 11:02 a.m., another atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. The fireball ignited the fire of hell throughout the city. Water, give me water. Please give me some water. I am burning, pleaded the faint voices of the ghostly figures. How can we forget their voices?
We
offer them a cup of water to ease their pains.
Repose in peace, for we shall never allow such evil again.
Repose in peace, for we shall never allow this evil ever again. The pleas for a peaceful and nuclear-free world by those who suffered unspeakable pains and griefs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki shall never be silenced. Let us offer them a cup of water to quench their thirst for peace.
As we pour water to the altar, let us renew our commitment never to allow such sufferings and destruction as we have seen in Hiroshima and Nagasaki to be repeated anywhere on the face of the earth. No more Hiroshimas, no more Nagasakis.
We commit all our spiritual resources to leave our posterity a peaceful and nuclear-free world. No more Hiroshimas, no more Nagasakis. As we pour water on the altar, let us pray for the world of peace, justice, compassion, courage, and hope. Let us keep hoping and working until such weapons of mass destruction is eradicated from the face of the earth. We shall always be a people of peace, justice, compassion, courage, and hope. No more wars, no more nuclear weapons.
Now we invite the clergy representatives of congregations of various faith traditions to pour water on this statue. This concludes the ceremony.